All right, let's dive in. We're about to tackle one of the most monumental, maybe one of the most challenging, and definitely one of the most profound novels ever written. I'm talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky's final masterpiece, The Brothers Karamazov. And believe me, this isn't just a story. It's this sprawling, epic battleground of ideas. We're talking faith, doubt, morality, and really the very nature of what it means to be human. And in classic Russian novel fashion, it all kicks off with a promise of tragedy. Seriously, the narrator tells us right from the very beginning that a gloomy and tragic death is going to be at the heart of this whole thing. But this isn't just some simple foreshadowing. No, no. It's the event that lights the fuse on a philosophical explosion, one that's going to tear a family apart and maybe even shake up some of your own certainties. So what you have here is basically a murder mystery. A father is murdered, and this guy is, let's just say, not a great person. And his three sons? Well, they're all suspects. But here's the catch, and this is so crucial to understanding the book. Dostoevsky isn't really all that interested in who physically did the deed. He's way more interested in who is truly responsible. And suddenly, the whole question of guilt, it just blows up into something so much bigger than a simple courtroom verdict. Okay, so first up, a murder in the family. Let's really dig into the crime itself and the man at the center of it all. Because this isn't just about one murder, right? It's really about the total collapse of a family, which itself is like a small-scale version, a microcosm of this huge spiritual crisis happening in society at the time. To really get a grip on this book, it helps to know a little bit about the man who wrote it. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Well, his own life was steeped in piety and poverty. His dad was a doctor, yeah, but the family was poor. We're talking 7 people crammed into just 2 rooms. And this first-hand experience with both hardship and deep faith, it fueled this lifelong obsession he had with what he called the eternal questions. Does God exist? Why is there so much suffering in the world? How can we be saved? These are the exact soul-wrenching questions his characters are fighting with on every single page. Okay, section 2, the 3 brothers. So let's meet our main suspects, shall we? The 3 Karamazov brothers are so much more than just characters in a novel. You have to think of them as living, breathing philosophies. Each one represents a completely different path that a person could take in life, a different direction for the human soul. So first up, you've got Dmitri, Mitya, they call him. He's the eldest, and he is a man of the body through and through, just driven by passion, impulse, all his earthly desires. He even says it himself, sensual lust is a tempest, worse than a tempest. Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have Ivan, the intellectual, the brilliant one. He is a man of the mind, and his logic is so powerful, so relentless, that it leads him to a pretty terrifying conclusion. If there's no God, then there's no such thing as morality. And if there's no morality, then everything is permitted. He's the embodiment of pure, rational doubt. And standing between these 2 extremes is the youngest brother, Alexei or Alyosha. If Dmitri is the body and Ivan is the mind, then Alyosha, he's the spirit. He's a novice in a monastery, and he's trying to deal with all the chaos in the world, not with logic, but with something he calls active love and faith. And really, the core conflict of the entire book just boils down to this one incredible exchange between him and Ivan. Ivan just states it, flat out, there is no immortality. And Alyosha's reply is just as simple, just as direct. In God is immortality. And boom, right there. That's the central debate of the whole thing. See, the ideas these brothers represent, they aren't just abstract theories for a philosophy class. They have very real, very serious consequences. For one of these brothers, his path is leading straight to a physical prison. A courtroom is about to decide his fate, and the wheels of justice are already turning. All right, section 3, the Grand Inquisitor. This is where that massive conflict of ideas really hits its peak. We're diving into the philosophical heart of the entire novel. It's a famous chapter, a story within a story, that the intellectual brother Ivan has come up with. And honestly, this little poem of his is one of the most famous, most debated passages in all of world literature. For good reason, too. Ivan's whole parable is built on this one really profound observation about us. He argues that the deepest secret of human nature isn't just the will to live. It's the desperate need to have something to live for. We crave meaning more than anything else, even more, he says, than freedom. And it's this craving, this need, that he thinks is a kind of fatal flaw, one that powerful institutions have learned to exploit. So here's the setup for Ivan's story. Imagine Christ returns to Earth, right in the middle of the Spanish Inquisition. What happens? He's immediately arrested by the Grand Inquisitor, this powerful old church cardinal. And in a dark prison cell, the Inquisitor lays it all out. He tells Christ that he's no longer needed because the church has corrected his work by taking away the one thing he gave to humanity, freedom of choice. The Inquisitor's argument is pretty brutal. He says humanity, deep down, can't handle the terrible burden of being free. It's too much for us. So he claims the church gave people what they really want instead. And what are those things? Miracle, mystery, and authority. In other words, they traded the hard work of free faith for the comfort of the supernatural. They traded their own individual conscience for the security of a higher authority telling them what to do, and they traded the chaos of choice for the unity of one powerful structure. And here's the Inquisitor's final, absolutely chilling conclusion. He says that he and the church, they've chosen to love humanity more than Christ did. Why? Because they chose to give people what they crave, bread and security. They made them happy. But they did it by taking away their freedom, by removing that crushing weight of having to choose between good and evil for themselves. It is, when you think about it, a terrifyingly powerful argument for a kind of benevolent dictatorship of the soul. In this whole parable, it just brilliantly shows us the other kind of prison Dostoevsky is so interested in. Not one made of stone and steel, but a spiritual one, a cage built from ideas and doubt. Because Ivan's own powerful logic, it's created an intellectual prison for him. He's trapped by it, unable to escape the dark, empty conclusions of his own philosophy. And so the novel asks us, which prison is actually worse? All right, section 4, a judicial error. So while all these huge, towering philosophical debates are swirling around, we have to come back down to earth. There's a very real court of law that has to figure out a very simple question: who killed the father Fyodor Karamazov? And, fittingly, maybe even ironically, the part of the book that covers the trial is titled A Judicial Error. When you look at the investigation, all the evidence seems to be stacked against one person. That's Dmitri. He had the motive, he needed money, and he was in a romantic rivalry with his own father. Plus, he was seen at the scene of the crime, even made public threats. It looks like an open and shut case, but the novel, it slowly, carefully reveals all these other layers of guilt. You've got Ivan, who basically provided the intellectual permission slip for the murder, with his theory that everything is lawful. And then there's the unacknowledged fourth son, Smerdyakov. He's this resentful, crafty servant who, it turns out, was listening very, very closely to Ivan's ideas. So, in the end, the court makes its big judicial error. It convicts the passionate one, Dmitri. And for all of his faults, he's arguably the one who is the least philosophically guilty of the crime. But Dostoevsky's real point here is much, much deeper. The legal verdict doesn't really matter, because in a spiritual sense, every single one of them is responsible. This is the big truth that the wise characters in the book keep talking about, this idea that everyone is responsible for everyone and for everything. Which brings us to our final section, the path to renewal. So if a court of law can't provide real justice, then where can we find it? The novel's final act isn't about legal appeals or finding some new piece of evidence. No, it's about a much more difficult, much more profound journey, the renewal of the human soul. Now, there's actually a quote from another one of Dostoevsky's great novels, Crime and Punishment, that just perfectly captures the feeling at the end of this book. It says, "But that is the beginning of a new story, the story of the gradual renewal of a man." And that's exactly what's happening here. Dmitri's conviction isn't the end, it's the start of something new. It's his chance for regeneration, a chance to find true spiritual freedom even while he's physically locked away. And this is it. This is Dostoevsky's ultimate answer to all the chaos and suffering in the world: redemption. Well, it's not found in Ivan's brilliant but ultimately empty logic, and it's not found in Dmitri's unchecked passions. No, it's found in the path that Alyosha takes, the hard, humble, day-to-day work of active love, of forgiveness, and of accepting that deep, shared responsibility for one another. And so, in the end, that leaves us, you and me, with the final huge question: where does true freedom really lie? Is it in the certainty of a system, like the one the Grand Inquisitor offers, a world with security and bread but built on spiritual slavery? Or is it in the uncertainty of faith, Alyosha's world of active love and shared responsibility, built on the often terrifying burden of free will? Dostoevsky lays out the two paths. The choice, well, that's left up to us.